Hello YouTubers. I'm going to show you a slat trap I built. I went on the internet trying to find plans and they're really hard to find. I've fished slat traps before, but I've always bought them. I've never actually made one. They're not really hard to make. They're very simple. I made this out of reclaimed wood that I found, salvage, scrap. The only thing I bought was this plastic throat. I bought it from a company here in Louisiana called Fishnet Company. They're out of Jonesville, Louisiana. You can buy them at Memphis Net and Twine, but Jones in the place in Louisiana has them a few dollars cheaper. I think I paid $5.95 for this, and you can actually call those people up and get a live person on the phone, and you can actually understand them. They speak English. So anyway, I thought about making this, and I could have made this, but for $5 I just bought it. So I wasn't sure how to build a trap until I got this in, and then I could kind of look at some pictures on the internet and kind of figure out the dimensions. So what I did is, once I got this in, as you can see, it's got a lip on this side, but there's no lip on this side. So I basically built a box frames to support this, and then I built everything around this. So if you come around to the front, and I'm going to show you all the dimensions and the sizes on everything in here. I built all my corners out of 45-degree angles, and I think that makes for a stronger joint than just sticking them on top of one another. And also I put some gussets on the back of all the braces to make it stronger. Now, the one problem I had when I used to buy traps is, of course, you got to soak them in the water and get them waterlogged before they'll sink. But if you've ever fished a slat trap and you kept it in the water for a while and you pull it out and you put it in your yard and it dries out, you'll find it does some weird things. It'll actually start to separate. The wood will shrink and separate, and you're constantly going back and tacking the thing back together. And I found that they really separated a lot where the joints were. So what I did, instead of I brad nailed them in, but all my joints on here are epoxy. And the reason is that because I didn't want water to get inside of that joint to swell that joint up and start separating my trap. So all my joints are held together with epoxy and brad nails. And the epoxy obviously serves to support the joint and keep it together, but it keeps the water out. Now, I didn't coat the whole thing in epoxy because you got to have it to be able to soak up water and get waterlogged. So I'm going to start by showing you the dimensions. Now, check with your local state government and your fishery, wildlife fisheries. I'm in Louisiana, so we got a certain trap size dimension. Some states you're not even allowed to fish them, but here in Louisiana you can, as long as you're above the salt line, which is you can't fish them in salt water. So in my state, you can't have one longer than 6 feet, and it can't be no more than 24 inches wide. Mine, the one I built, is not truly a square trap, it's more rectangle. It's 17 inches wide by 14.5 tall, and that's in proportion to this trap. Now what I did, come around over there, the little door I made, stick it in here that way. If you ever fish traps, you'll notice you always bait your cheese around the throat, the plastic throat. And what happens after a while is you pack it all around here, it gets waterlogged, you'll wind up, it falls all to the bottom of the trap. So what I did is I put some little hardware cloth in there, and I made it ridged so I can pack that cheese in there good, and it'll stay in there a little better. So I'm going to show you some pictures as I was building this, and it'll explain in a little better looking at the pictures. Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention was the dimensions. How far back should this throat be from the ticklers? I'm just eyeballing this on what I used to remember they used to be. But from the face of this plastic throat to the tickler, it's roughly about 5 inches. Okay, so from the first frame member to the second one, where the plastic throat is 14 inches. From the plastic throat to the second support is, from the second is 20 inches. And then from the last one, or from the middle frame to the last support is 3 foot. Okay? So we can look at the whole view. You go 14, 34 inches. No, I'm sorry. From the first to 14 inches, then 34, and then roughly 68 and a half. And that'll give you it's just a little under 6 foot. There you go. But the whole trap is only 6 foot long. It's 6 foot long, 17 wide, 14 and a half tall. And the door is pretty simple construction. It's just a continuation of the slats. And it lips in here. Oops. And then that sits in these little, just lock it in there so it won't come up. And that's about it. Oh, come around in the front. These are what they call the ticklers. This is where the catfish comes in. It kind of directs them into the trap. And as he touches these, he'll instinctively kind of shoot forward. And this is how I made that. This was probably the most difficult section that I had to figure out. So this is how I made this. Each one of these were 2 inches wide. I ripped these down on a table saw, 2 inches wide. And then I moved my table saw fence in a 1/2 inch. And then I adjusted my blade, and here's it. I had to play around with this, but I adjusted my blade to 20 degrees. And at 20, and then ripped them again, and then it put this nice little angle that these tickler slats will rest nice on. Now I did epoxy these in here. As you can see, the epoxy, and Brad nailed them in. But I didn't coat, I left the rest of the wood bare so it'll soak up water. But basically you're making a picture frame. As you can see, my 45s, little picture frame. And then before you put it together, rip them down again at 20 degrees. And that'll give you the perfect angle for these tickler slats. Now what I did with these, you don't have to make them pretty like this. See, mine are a little tapered, how they taper down. I just did that to make it a little lighter and a little more fancier, but you don't have to get that fancy. You could actually leave it square like that. It doesn't matter. But that's about it. Now, what kind of wood is this made of? I know some of you are gonna say, you should have used pine, or you should have used cypress, or whatever. The wood was free. If you ever saw an old house where they put plaster Paris in it, they made slats on the wall and then covered that with plaster Paris. These come out of an old house. They're just old pine slats that were laying out on the side of the road. My total investment in this, my throat, epoxy, probably less than $12. So if I lose the slat, I'm only out 12 bucks. If I lose the trap, I mean. They average price about 50 or 60 bucks if you were to go buy one. I'd rather lose $12 than 50 if I lost the trap in the river. So feel free to leave me a comment, suggestions. If you like my trap, hit the like button. We appreciate it. I want to thank my assistant, my daughter Lindsay, for being my photographer, cameraman, and she's going to be my photo editor too. So if you got any complaints about the video, direct it to her. Thank you. Have a good one.